Hi everyone and welcome to History Calling. Today we're travelling high into the Himalayan mountains to look at a lake like no other. Officially called Lake Roopkund, it has become better known as either Skeleton Lake or Mystery Lake, in honour of the hundreds of human skeletons which have been discovered there. No one knows who they were or how or why they came to be on the mountain, and when DNA testing and radiocarbon dating were carried out, the results flabbergasted scientists and ensured that this historical mystery is only getting deeper. Please remember to like this video, leave a comment below and subscribe to my channel with a little notification bell switched on so that YouTube lets you know every time I post new content. The mystery of Skeleton Lake first came to prominence at the height of the Second World War in September 1942, when a forest ranger, H.K. Madwell, who had been assigned to collect samples of local flowers, stumbled across the 40-metre wide pool. It lies in the Uttarakhand region of the Indian Himalayas at an altitude of 5,029 metres or 16,500 feet, and though usually frozen solid, during brief spells of slightly warmer weather, the ice in and around it melts. It was under these circumstances that Madwell and his companions found it. He described the site in a 1956 radio interview, saying, "What appeared to be a ledge was actually the outer edge of a small lake. As we approached nearer, we could see the muddy waters of a lake, and when we actually reached its bank, we were face to face with a ghastly scene that made us catch our breath. The whole place was littered with scores of human bodies. Flesh like inflated rubber was sticking to most of the bodies. Their grinning faces made the scene still more hideous. Our porters were so much terrified at this gruesome sight that they at once took to their heels, thinking that they had landed in a ghost land. My assistant, Lakam Singh, and I, however, stayed behind for a while to have a closer view of the bodies and the lake. We saw that the bodies were unusually large. There were artefacts too, which Madwell also spoke of, noting that the leather chapels, which are a kind of shoe like a slipper, which we found lying here and there in the debris, were large-sized and of a type not commonly seen in the Uttar Pradesh, which is what this area of India was called at the time. There were also pieces of wooden utensils, country-made umbrellas and bamboo sticks mixed with the rubble. Most of these human relics were partially buried in the gravel and silt on the lake. Though the 1942 expedition is often cited as the point at which general interest in the bodies started to become widespread, in fact, locals in the region already knew about them, and knowledge of their existence can be dated to at least 1905, with one story from a man who saw them in 1925 stating that at that point they were still wearing some of their clothing. The eerie site at the lake has continued to attract considerable attention over the years, and there were further professional expeditions in the 1950s, at which point it was noted that rock slides and weather events such as falling and melting snow had broken up and scattered the remains so that the site no longer looked as it had even as recently as 1942. Other artefacts were also found, including pieces of glass from bracelets and fragments of pots which could have been used as musical instruments. With these additional visits came attempts to explain who these people were and what might have killed them. Some suggested that the deceased had died due to an epidemic, others that they had been part of a military expedition, perhaps Japanese soldiers trying to invade India as part of the war, or a lost army dating back to the Tibetan campaign of Dogra General Jorawar Singh in 1841. The artefacts with the bodies didn't support these military explanations though, nor did carbon dating carried out in the mid-20th century, which placed the bones and material objects at anywhere from 500 to 800 years old, much too far back to date from either the 1840s or the 1940s. It was suggested that the high altitude and freezing temperatures or even a freak hailstorm might be to blame. Local legend, preserved in song, even spoke of an enraged goddess, Nanda Devi, killing a group of royal pilgrims to the site with iron balls thrown from the sky as punishment for their poor behaviour in bringing dancing girls with them and allowing their queen to give birth in the area, thereby polluting it. Might this have been another reference to a hailstorm? There were no definitive answers though. Then, in 2003, a number of the skeletons were studied for a National Geographic documentary which aired in 2004. They were dated to around 850 AD, nearly 1200 years ago, and it was argued that there were two groups of people, one taller and one shorter, some of whom were related, and that they came from India. What was more, 3 had unhealed compression fractures on their skulls, a finding which might further support the idea of death during a violent hailstorm or at least during one defined event, but which could have also indicated that these people were used to carrying things around on their heads, as pilgrims might do. National Geographic declared the mystery solved and attributed it to a mass death during a pilgrimage. They were wrong though, and nothing could have prepared scientists for what they would find next. In 2019, further analysis of the bones was carried out, this time on 38 individuals. Researchers identified 23 males and 15 females, covering a range of age groups. Incidentally, this gender and age mix alone also rule out a military expedition as an explanation. To their surprise, the scientists further discovered that, rather than dating from one point in history and belonging to the same genetic group as had previously been thought, these individuals were not only unrelated but also came from 3 different genetic groups and had arrived at the site at different points across a whopping 1,000-year time frame. Group A, comprising 23 individuals, were from South Asia, most likely India, though they weren't from one specific area. They lived from the 7th to the 10th centuries and appear to have arrived at the lake over an extended period of time. Group B, comprising 14 individuals, came from West Eurasia. Their DNA most closely matched people from modern-day Greece and Crete, and radiocarbon dating put their deaths in a range encompassing the 17th to the 20th centuries, though it's more likely that they arrived together or during a much tighter time frame than the individuals in Group A. Group C contains only 1 individual from Southeast Asia who also died between the 17th and 20th centuries. None of the individuals tested had DNA which suggested that they had originated in the local area around the lake. There is little in the scientific analysis to suggest cause of death either, beyond the aforementioned head injuries present in 3 of the individuals looked at by the National Geographic team, but which might be explained by carrying heavy objects on their heads. No evidence of any bacterial infection was found in the 2019 study either, thereby making an epidemic highly unlikely, though not impossible. But there are too many people dating from too wide a date range for this to account for all the bodies, and the Roopkund Lake skeletons surely met their fates thanks to a variety of reasons. They also seem to have been in good health on the whole. As previous explorers had noted, many were unusually tall, and DNA analysis further showed that their diets were varied, lending even greater credence to the idea that they came from different areas. These areas all seem to have been inland rather than coastal, however, as there was little evidence of marine-based diets. Nothing has been found in archival records which can explain who any of these people were, though, or how they came to be high in the Himalayas so far from home. The scientists who conducted the research naturally enough struggled to account for their findings. Writing in the journal Nature Communications in 2019, these most recent investigators posited that the Group A individuals and the person from Group C might have been part of a pilgrimage. The Nanda Devi Rajat pilgrimage, which you'll remember supposedly led to the goddess killing a group of royal pilgrims sometime in the distant past, now occurs about every 12 years and dates to at least the 19th century. According to evidence from local temples, however, it may well date back far enough to have been in existence as early as the 8th century, and so the Group A and C skeletons may have met their end as part of this ritual. As for Group B, the scientists could only conclude that how and why these people from the vicinity of Greece and Crete ended up at a remote lake in the Himalayas is an even greater enigma, it being unlikely that they were partaking in a Hindu ritual, as that religion wasn't common in their homelands. Far from being solved, this lake and its secrets have only become more complicated. So what next? As noted, over the years the site has been disturbed by rock slides, moving ice, hikers and pilgrims, all of which have rearranged and damaged the bones and, in the case of human visitors, even removed many of them, sometimes for scientific analysis, sometimes as gruesome souvenirs. This means that the site has changed dramatically even since the 1940s and makes it all the harder to understand how the people were originally buried, if they were interred at all. It also limits the number of additional individuals and artifacts which can be examined in the future to try to throw further light on this mysterious lake. On the other hand, though no archival material has been found so far to help explain this conundrum, documents may yet appear which would at least help to explain the fate of the later Group B and C individuals, as by historical standards the 18th century is quite recent and they may have travelled or been deposited there even later than that. There is therefore some reason to be hopeful. But what do you make of this Himalayan mystery? Let me know in the comments section below, where I'll also leave links to some of the articles I used during my research for this video and which you can read to learn more about this case. They're all freely available and include the 2019 article in Nature Communications and a paper written by one of the scientists who visited the site in the 1950s. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember to make sure you're subscribed with notifications switched on so that you don't miss next week's offering. Until then, keep learning.